One of the things that ends up being really interesting is if we go back to 2018 and we look, Bitcoin had peaked in 2017 at $20,000. It had drawn down and it was sitting somewhere around $6,000 or so, $5,000. So it had drawn down like 75%. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, it's down 75%. Like this is the bottom, quote unquote. And they're getting very excited. Obviously, it puked all the way down and eventually hit, I think it was like 3,200, give or take. And it was very much a puke, right? There was kind of this grind down to 75% drawdown, and then and you hit that 3,200. And then pretty much from there, once you hit the bottom, grind it up, and everyone knows kind of what happened from there. Is your expectation from a market standpoint that these types of markets will just grind down, eventually hit some bottom and then recover? Or do you think that there is kind of that puking or that final capitulation that occurs that could send prices down, I don't know, maybe a couple $1,000s in one kind of rapid move? Or like, how do you think about just the expectation you would have for what will eventually be the bottom, whether it's now or, some lower price?
Yeah. Well, it's for a bunch of different reasons. The setup here is not comparable to November 2018. It's just not the same for a bunch of different reasons. It's a much bigger asset class. It's a much more institutionalized asset class. That was a almost entirely retail driven market. And you had this hangover from 2017 that was much more excessive than the price action that we had in 2021, in 2020 and 2021, especially in Bitcoin, I would say. And so I struggle to compare the two. I struggle to compare the 6K level that we bounced off of in 2018 a bunch of times before we broke in November and got cut in half. I don't think that's comparable to, like, say, this 29K level from July 2021. That's not to say that I don't think we can lose 29K this time around, because if the stress gets bad enough in traditional, which there's quite a decent chance that it could, we could lose that 29K level. But it could, like I said, it could get pretty pukey. But I think the ability and the willingness for the market to look through the short-term volatility and that short-term pukiness to look at this asset class broadly and Bitcoin specifically and say, this stuff is all much higher a few years from now, just makes now incomparable to like that 2018 timeframe when, like, people just thought all this stuff could go away after that November 2018 price crash. And one of the things that I remind people of a lot, because in this monthly market update that we've been looking at charts in, I have these monthly highlights, just like a bullet point of like my subjective view on the most impactful sort of news announcements over the course of the month. And one of the things that I track pretty closely that's just been astonishing is the amount of venture capital coming into the space and the magnitude, the breadth and depth of the capital raises for projects, and then the amount of VC fundraises. So like the funds themselves, and then the projects that they've been funding, and you put that together, and just like the aggregate amount of capital, permanent capital that's coming into this space is stunning and completely different. And you're talking about hundreds of projects that already have years of runway today, and then VCs with billions and billions of dry powder that they're sitting on today, if not another dollar is raised into crypto VC. And all of that is going to be deployed over the course of this year and next year and the year after that, if not another dollar of permanent capital comes into this space. And it is that capital that will fund the projects and the innovation that will drive additional adoption, that will, put a bottom in for this market and cause all of this to head higher than it ever has been before. And like, I'm about as highly convicted on that as I can be on anything.
Yeah, I tend to think that everything involved with the fear of the market is very, very short term. We could be talking weeks, right? I don't think that this continues for 6 months and then we get a bottom or anything like that. Like, it feels maybe we're not quite there yet, but definitely there's way more fear than usual, and so that usually tends to be a pretty good indicator.